How can you heal or tend to a wound while the wound is still being attacked? Well, this is the question senior lecturer and researcher at the University of Cape Town Centre for Theatre, Dance, Performance Studies, Mandla Mbothwe, hopes to answer with his latest production, iKrele, leChiza, The Sermon. The production runs at Magnet Theatre from the 28th of March to the 2nd of April. Mbothwe joins us now via Zoom to tell us more. Mr. Mbothwe, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Simpiwe, and thank you for the invite. Good morning to everyone.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, give us a brief synopsis of what iKrele leChiza is all about and what the inspiration is behind it.
Well, Simpiwe, I've always been obsessed or fascinated by the notions of Ubuntu and the desire and the need for us to find a way of returning it into the heart of the meaning of Ubuntu. That desire have always been coming against the notions of the systems that are in place that seems to be stimulating the ideas of the division between the poor and the rich.
Yes.
And also the violence of poverty in our communities. So iKrele leChiza, it's about trying to return, it's about restoration, it's about revenge and restoration. So iKrele leChiza, it's about these two siblings that are left alone at home, and their house, meaning it in this case it represents Ubuntu, humanity in our societies, is constantly being attacked by the systems, and these systems of course are being played by different characters. And in an African tradition of storytelling, the systems such as that we will call them amagongono, we will call them the cannibals, we will call them actually the vampires, people who seek to suck and live with someone else's blood. So the work itself in a Greek, actually, which I'm also part of this project is part of the research project that is called ReText, meaning that reimagining tragedy from Africa and global South. And I've taken the idea of Telemachus from the Odyssey, Greek thing, where the son is left with the mother, and the father went on into the war but never came back. In this case, I've retraced and remapped my production, my past production. In my very, very early years production, which was called Ingwabalendo, that's Cangwendlela. The father left the house from the rural areas, and it is believed that the father went to the Joburg to work. You know, the migration issues is caused by poverty and all colonialism and the continuous presence of apartheid in our society. But only in this production, we find out that the father actually never left. The father went to exile. So in this production, the father went to exile, but he never returned when everyone else was returned. It is known that the father got caught up in spiritual wars of evil. And the mother also is caught up in between the world of the orientation for the ancestors to be placed in a particular room where different ancestors are being placed. So the children, like in most of our society, that children find themselves alone in the house. Yes. And then the son, and then they are constantly attacked. They are constantly attacked by the judicial system that doesn't help the issues of economic inequalities. They are being attacked by people who really want to take the abuse of neighbors, of villagers. So the judicial powers are not working. And the son says that, listen, I want to go and find my father. And I want to go, and he goes to this underworld to find his father. That also talks about the people that died in exile that never returned. So this production also dedicates the collection of the spirit and the souls of those people that died away from home and restore them back to house, to the home, to regain that humanity. So in short, it's really about restoration, the humanity, and saying that our house is not only collapsing, it's in a state of just 1 minute it will collapse. That actually, if we don't do anything about our humanity, about the violence of poverty, about the loss of humanity in our society, we will find ourselves in a total collapse state as a society.
I heard you mention restoration and humanity in the same sentence, but make us, or rather help us make sense of the themes that you explore with this production and why they are worth shining the spotlight on.
I think our society is suffering under huge illnesses from the past that is currently present in our state. And I think also there's quite a lot of COVID-19 have highlighted so much in our societies that the results of the violence of poverty in our society actually are quite terrible. We've got the society that is suffering under a huge wound. The mental illness is skyrocketing, gender-based violence is skyrocketing, and there's quite a lot of violence that is growing in all aspects of. So that restoration for me is to say that we must remember that actually, that there are systems that can assist us to install humanity to our societies, to mitigate these issues from happening. That is the restoration for me. It is the revival of the spirit of Ubuntu in the systems that we live in. And the production is really about that. iKrele represents that healing. And many kinds of healing that are needed, the spiritual healing, the materialistic healing that I've just referred to in relation to economic systems. But as a society, I think to become a society and to be able to move together as a society, we need to attend to the wound. Now, the question is, how do you attend to the wound when it's continuously being attacked, when the system still continues to be there and all those kinds of things? And I think iKrele leChiza try to battle and agitate that kind of response and that kind of question without any particular response. But we know our belief that we are stuck in a place as a society that is not desirable. And we need to move on as a society. And we need to seek various forms of moving on, not just one. So one of them is the materialistic one, which is an economic system that we really need to deal with. And the second one is the spiritual understanding of our world and of our people. And as African, to reclaim that spirituality at the center of trying to heal.
Indeed, indeed. Now take us through your cast and why they were the best people for these roles. For instance, what drew you to Uthando Doni, Babala Zimbini Makwetu?
Well, first of all, I'm always attracted to people that are not just performers, people who are makers, people who are writers, people who are theater makers, and people who are just stunning energies to work with. That speaks also into the belief system that the shows that we make, some people actually, I always say that I do not make theater, I make prayers, I make spiritual healing spaces that before we even try and attempt and teach the audience, before we even try and attempt to heal the audience, we must heal ourselves first, because it's not that we are innocent from the wounded nation as artists. So we need to deal with our stuff first so that we can move on. So Uthando Doni is a stunning director, stunning theater maker, amazing performer, and his relationship with Magnet Theatre with me comes from a very long way in a way. And Babala Makwetu is one of the best theater makers, musical directors, and the maker of the original sound and music. Never mind that she's one of the golden voices in South Africa that people have not really heard. And I think they must check her out. And of course, there's a group of trainees that are in their graduation year at Magnet Theatre, 26 young people. Magnet Theatre actually has been actually running a training program for the past 10 years. And I think this is actually the 6th or the 7th 2-year group of trainees who we have trained and graduated and are being competent in the world out there. So that's the group is about that. Anyway, I've got Indalo Stofile, I've got Ubongo Nikani, I've got Unoma Kresu Plakatukaka, who's got a stunning voice, what we call the husky voice, that voice that your mama was about crossing. So the cast is really beautiful and stunning, and the designers of the work itself, amazing. Linda Mandela, who designed the costume and the set, Temba Stewart, who designed the lighting. So I always work with a village group. So I don't create work alone. I always say to people, I can't write a script. The script comes from people. So I write monologues and poetry as everyone else does. So it's a collection of so what's beautiful about the piece itself? The piece itself is a multi-vocal and voices and tongue creation of the work itself. So together we all put our voices in making this Eliezer to try and deal with the wound that is actually constantly being attacked by our society.
That's actually so heartwarming, Mr. Mbothwe. And apart from this production seeking to address the question, how can you heal or tend to a wound while the wound is still being attacked? So what kind of lessons do you hope your audience will take away from iKrele leChiza, the sermon?
I think Simpiwe, it's quite important to acknowledge that we are a wounded nation, but I don't think us we should actually succumb to that and say, yes, we are, and do nothing. I think for me, I always say that it's an unfortunate thing or realization that knowing that actually there is no point in life where you say that I have reached healing, now I'm totally healed. Unfortunately, there is no point. No one can claim that I've reached a particular place in my life that I am healed. But the search and the attempt and the acknowledgement of the presence of the wound and the agitation of that wound, for me, is the progression part of our lives that help us to feel better and help us to heal a bit and a bit. But a total kind of ignorance of that wound, of that issue, that brings the society into problem. If you don't engage people, if you don't really deal with people's issues in a sincere manner, where people are also participating in dealing with those issues, then people will find other forms of drawing your attention to them.
One may ask, Mr. Mbothwe, if it should be a collective effort or an individual effort to tend to that wound, how would you advise people? Should we, the kind of role that we should play, what is it in terms of addressing or tending to this wound?
We are a very diverse society. Even the family itself, if it's experiencing a particular wound, there are collective rituals, collective methods, and collective means of helping the family as a family to heal together. But also there are individual rituals and forms and ways that will help the individual to heal, even if that wound have attacked that particular family. Similarly to our society, we are a very diverse society. We really need to try and find ways of employing the richness of our culture, of our art, of our ways of doing things. At times it takes us to go back a bit to find that medicine at the backyard of our house, to say that actually this is the herb that we're dealing with. I think it does not help us as a society to always look outside of our society to seek for help. Help is within. Help is in the kitchen. Help is in our garden. Help is in our brains, in our spirituality. Help is in our culture, is our art. And culture and art actually plays a central role in helping the society, not as an aftermath, but as a way of preventing these kind of illnesses that we're dealing with as a society. When I say culture, I mean spirituality too.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Mbothwe, I quite like your attempt at addressing this question, how can a wound heal when it's constantly being attacked? But I suppose then it'll do much more justice if the play itself, if the production itself addresses this question. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Simpiwe. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Well, that was a writer, director, teacher, curator, Mandla Mbothwe, speaking to us about his production, iKrele, leChiza, the sermon, which runs at the Magnet Theatre from the 28th of March to the 2nd of April.